another episode of Just Contact Podcast, episode 19. Now, I think this week I wanna dive a little bit deeper into a different mental space. Um, I feel like the world has gone into so many different ways. There's ways you can take it. There's ways you can't take it. There's ways people's trying to move on. There's ways people are trying to deal with things. Um, it's crazy because I feel like my perception of things is where way I feel, but perception just covers such a very broad topic. But I think today I want to narrow it down because I was talking to my wife into different sense, and I've realized over the years I've been blessed with being able to not perceive correctly sometimes, but have the opportunity to learn. So when future come around, I'll be able to have some better perception of stuff or be able to understand things to make things flow a little bit more forward easily. But I guess that's just my mind space. Now, Janelle, I'm gonna let you go. Just let me know what you think.
Well, so let's start off with the definition of perception this week. And then I'm going to take you guys into a story that I heard recently. It was on a really great TED Talk, too. So, perception, the art or faculty of perceiving or apprehending by means of the senses or of the mind, cognition, or understanding. Immediate or intuitive recognition or appreciation as of moral, psychological, or aesthetic qualities. Intuition, discernment. That is what the dictionary app gave me, which is like one of my best friends on my phone. I think that in relationships, perception is definitely key. I mean, generally, perception is key in a lot of areas in life, but relationships are just one of those things that you gotta hone in, right? Because there are two people in each relationship. I mean, unless you're polyamorous and get it, boo, do you. And each person is going to have a different perception based off of their upbringing, based off of their morals, based off of, the way that they have learned things in the past. So I want to start out with a story from this TED Talk, and I forgot the lady's name. But I just listened to it like a week or two ago. So she's a psychologist, and essentially she was talking about a letter that she received from somebody who, I guess she gives advice weekly or something. I don't know if it was like a newspaper that she was writing for. And so the letter came in, and the woman was basically saying that she felt like her husband was cheating on her, and they, it doesn't seem like he's attracted to her anymore, and they seem to have just like drifted for a few years, and things just aren't the same anymore, and they don't even have sex, and just a lot, right? And then she gets another letter, and the letter just so happens to be from the woman's husband. And the letter from the woman's husband is talking about the fact that he really loves his wife, and he doesn't know how to make it work at this point because it seems like she's annoyed by everything he does. They started having problems a few years back when his father passed away because he was grieving, and she didn't really understand his grieving. So what he ended up doing, I guess he met somebody at a support group that he talked to and that understood his grieving because she also had lost her father at the same time. So I guess getting that emotional support from her was what he needed at that time because his wife didn't understand. But he also acknowledges like, hey, I don't know how to fix this. Like everything I do is wrong to her. Like, we haven't been really on the same page, and I just want her to understand me. I want her to understand what I've been going through. I want her to get where I'm coming from. He was just like, it seems like, even just me chewing on my breakfast, like he said she makes my oats like soggy now so that when I don't crunch on it and it doesn't annoy her. Like everything that he was saying was basically a completely different perspective of the situation compared to his wife. Who, I mean, by all accounts, his wife like full on thinks that he's cheating on her and doesn't want her anymore. So getting into this conversation and just understanding the differences in perspective between the people that you're dealing with, sometimes I think people overlook that. A lot of times, I mean, I've told friends this as well recently, because I never used to work on this premise. I think that the majority of us are very, I don't want to say selfish, but we're focused on self a lot, like self-centered. Not in a bad way. It's just, who else is going to focus on you but you, right? Um, so when things like that, during the day might happen, you automatically think like this person did something to you or because of you. And a lot of times, I'll tell my friends at this point, like, you have to stop coming at it from that perspective and more think about it in terms of what could that person be going through for this to be happening right now. So for example, I have a friend who has a boss that like is really picky. Like he'll pick at everything and complain about everything. And, sometimes she'll go into the office and be like, he's pissed off with me and he said this to me. And I'm like, okay, but also consider the fact that he's probably really old and miserable. His wife doesn't even live in the same country as him. He has no family there. Like, he's going through his own stuff every damn day. So meanwhile, you're sitting here thinking that like it's all about you and he hates you and you're the worst, and like he probably got up this morning and his wife wants a divorce. Like, we really don't know what other people are going through at any given point in time. So when it comes to perspective on the way that people deal with you, I think it's always best to like take a pause, sit back and say, okay, could this person mean something different? If they don't mean something different, what is their intent? If they have a different intent, or if they have the same intent that you think that they have, is it directed at me, or are they lashing out because of something else going on in their life? The perspective that you have is not going to be the perspective that they have, because you are not living the life that they're living. You didn't go to work this morning and somebody didn't key your car, and you didn't spill the coffee all over your desk, and you didn't get all frustrated, and then, maybe an hour later bump into this person and this person cussed you off because you bumped into them by accident, right? So I think when it comes to relationships, when you're, dealing with somebody that you see every single day, and you deal with, a good portion of your life, because, they're probably not at work with you. God bless the people who work with their spouses. but people who are living with you and people who are, in your life for large periods of time, you automatically, have to step back and say, okay, is this because of me, or, is it something different? I need to learn, if it's not about me, just leave it alone. When they get, into their feelings enough to internalize and come out and say, hey, this is what was going on with me earlier, then you'll understand. But it's never the best thing to do to just go back and forth with somebody when you don't really know what's happening, especially if it's something that you wouldn't imagine that the person would do or say. To me, that's an indication that that absolutely wasn't what they intended. But, people generally jump to the worst case scenario, especially when your emotions are involved, especially when, like I said, you're self-centered. You think about, like, in relation to me, why was this said to me? Why was this done to me? It's all about me.
No, Janelle, I'm happy you did that. You touched on some topics that I've been low key smiling about in my mental space. First and foremost, let me shout out to all my people in their polygamous relationships. I think if there's one relationship that can definitely be used as perception is key, that'll be one relationships. Not saying I can get as deep into it because I do not have a polygamous relationship. I'm happily married. But I think over the years, not saying I would want one, I've learned to understand probably why they did what they did. Um, but I'm very happy that that was brought up because I think it kind of put my mind into a very good space, into why perception is definitely key in relationships in its sense. For example, and I'm gonna use myself as a scenario, something that me and Janelle was talking about earlier. Like at first when I just got married, and whenever I was hungry and I wanted stuff to eat, and it's either I go get it or I ask my wife. And I may sound like a lazy man at this time, guys. I ask my wife, and we'll get stuff to eat. And my wife always does this very unique reference. Is like, baby, I'm not hungry. I don't want anything to eat. And then the instant my plate of food hits the room, it's like automatic, boom, hunger has kicked in. Right? It's kicked in. It's like, and it's not even like it's kicked into where, oh, I just want to take 2 bites. It's like it's kicked in where half my plate is gone. I'm like, and then I'm not sure if anybody understand this. Guys' perception of their food is like, it's like some territorial stuff. Like, you can't want to dive into my food. Now, at first in my marriage,
All right, okay. I just want to give like the female perspective here because I said it earlier and I'm gonna say it again. Like, you are crazy if you do this. Like, actually, literally, psychologically crazy. Okay, because if somebody asks you if you want food, say that you want food. And if you don't want it at this point in time, say that you're gonna want it later. Please bring the food.
correct. But Janelle, what I've learned over that period is is how to change the perception of that. Because at first I was like, man, she's eating up all my food. Now, what I started doing in small different instances, and I'll use something a little bit later on that happened a couple of days ago. But over the years, whenever I try to get food, I try to have an excessive amount on my plate, knowing that if I come with what I want to eat, it's not gonna happen. Now, not saying I've said this to my wife because my perception now of her is that she gonna eat my food. Now, don't don't
Wait, but I mean, I applaud the fact that you found a solution to this problem. I applaud the fact that you're able to understand her perception. Um, However, like that also puts you at a disadvantage because I've seen your plates. I have seen your plates. Like if she don't eat your food, you eaten enough for like 3 people, bro.
definitely understandable. But over the period of time, she's definitely going to eat my food. Now, for example, I'm gonna take the scenario how we got into this very very intense argument because I know I'm gonna go on the road, right? And I'm hungry. Baby, where do you want to go? I'm not hungry. I don't want nothing to eat. You sure you don't want nothing to eat? Nah, I don't want nothing to eat. You sure, baby? Baby, so I think I may go by Wendy's. You don't want anything? No, well, I wanted like a chicken sandwich earlier, but I'm not hungry anymore. So you want a chicken sandwich earlier, and you're not hungry anymore. But I'm going to Wendy's. So I decided to go to Wendy's. And I'm gonna show you how this thing works, guys. And I'm gonna say this, guys. Husbands, if you listen to this, do not play with people's food. Hunger is a dangerous tool. Hunger is a dangerous tool, especially for women. I want to make sure I get it off very easy. So went out, got the food, right? And knowing that she's gonna eat my food, I came in with my food and I took her food because what I did, since she was not hungry, she didn't want anything. I went out to Wendy's and I got my burger. I bought her what I knew she was gonna want. She wanted a 4 for $4. She wanted chicken nuggets. She wanted sweet and sour sauce, and she wanted no tomatoes. She's completely don't want no tomatoes on any one of her sandwiches. So what I did, I got it and I folded the bag very tightly and put it at the bottom of my bag. So I started to eat my food. Right? So it's very curious that I'm eating my food and she's like, so can I have 2 of your fries? And I'm like, nah, bro, you ain't hungry. You say you ain't hungry. Right? So and I'm happy because you love to see my wife face in this one. So she technically did not know that, I got her food. So I started eating and I'm eating my fries and she's looking over at me. She's like, yo, like fam, you really didn't get me no food? Like you didn't know I was hungry? And I'm looking at her, I'm like, baby, you said you weren't hungry. But she's like, babe, you went to Wendy's. And I'm like, yes, I went to Wendy's. So I popped out her bag, right? And I gave her food. And she looked at me. She smiled very gracefully and gave me a kiss. And she went on to eating her food, watching her TV very, very happily. Now, I would say this, guys. These are some of the scenarios, as crazy as it sounds, as Janelle says, sometimes both spouses, because male, we're guilty of this as well. Because we'll hear our wives out on the street and doing little things. And I'm going to say this, for example, she stopped at the gas station. Oh, did you bring me anything to drink? Did you say you were thirsty, sir? Did you made any hint that you wanted gum or any candy? So when she comes home with her sweet tooth, like, yeah, stop and got something. And guys, just so you guys can learn something from me, so I can help you guys with your perception. Ladies love candy whenever they're going through their monthly cycles. I've noticed that a lot. I guess it comforts them. So I've always seen it comes around. So
and chocolate, like not just candy, chocolate.
You see what I'm saying?
Guys, like, yo, where's the Hershey's bar? Like, I need it.
No, and guys, I'm happy that this is a conversation because these are things, guys, we need to have better perception on, right? Because one of the reasons why we wanted to isolate the conversation of relationship, because if you don't understand your woman or your significant other, these perceptions can go one or two ways. It can either go very good, where, for example, I just use a very awesome scenario how I please my wife in a small sense of her perception, knowing that she says she ain't hungry. And I know that because I've been through this issue before. I know proceeded how to be better to make sure she was satisfied, right? But go ahead, Janelle.
I also want to emphasize the fact that as much as perception is key in these situations, and you have to know your partner and understand where they're coming from and what their perception of a situation is, your partner also has to be effective at communication. Because God knows, I hear this all the time from men that are like, yo, like she has her food and then like she just be eating my food. Or like I asked her if she wanted something and she didn't tell me that she wanted something. Now she mad at me because I bought myself food, but she didn't say she wanted something. And it's like, God, I am not that girl. Like I can always tell you what the I know what I want. I can always tell you what I want. There's no point in time that anybody asks me what I want to eat and I don't know what I want to eat. Now, the problem will come in is if I tell you what I want to eat and you still don't get me what I want to eat, because that's the problem. I didn't ask you for anything else. I asked you specifically for what I want.
And I'm happy that you touched on that because I've come to understand this is a reason why perception is so key, because you said something very important: communication. Guys, I would say this: the biggest thing that fixes perception in anyone's relationship is consider communication. Now, there's also little ways we can always figure this out, right? And I'm not going to say I'm perfect because I'm far from it. So let me take myself out of context, right? Just for the moment, because I'm not very good in this. But let's play the hypothetical factor. Say you're with your partner and you realize that your partner is doing certain things that will take you to a different space, right? Instead of perceiving that, yo, if my partner is upset, like let's not do something crazy. Let's figure out what's going on. Like I go through these cycles where my wife has said to me, and I'm using the word cycle because she's probably smiling in her mental space right now, because she's like, there you go, you learning, you know, you find your perception is getting better. As you know, I said, let's not dive too much into it, but in the sense that these things can get isolated in different ways through communication. For example, there are trigger stuff in relationships. My wife don't like leaving the toilet. If the toilet is up, it's gonna drive her crazy. Right? Now, if she ever comes into the bathroom, or my son will come in and use the bathroom and he leaves it up, her perception is that she's gonna beat me down because I did it. But there's no way for me to change that perception. The only thing I can do as a person is if I see it, I can be like, baby, I'm not the one who did it, but if I do see it open, knowing that it's gonna upset her, I go ahead and close it. Right? Now, what I will try to do is help my son fix his perception of what's gonna happen to him if his mom finds out that he may be the one that consistently keep leaving the toilet seat up, so daddy can stop getting in trouble for it. Right?
So wait, to be clear, the problem is leaving the toilet open or
yes.
leaving the seat up?
Well, technically it's leaving the whole thing up. She likes everything to be closed. You know,
Okay.
so it's closed down. So if you go there and like you party or whatnot, like close it down. I mean, guys, flush is important.
Okay,
I'm
well,
saying that.
I'm gonna just go on record right now and let your wife know that I believe in the toilet open too. So.
Oh, just so you know, I'm not the only one who gets in trouble for these things.
No, I'm just letting you know because I know I've spent some time at your house. So like sometimes it wasn't CN that left the toilet open. I don't use the toilet seat up, but I leave the toilet open. It's part of my compromise. Like I don't like the toilet seat left up, but like I'll leave the toilet open for you. Like like maybe if you like practice aim, then you won't need to put the toilet seat up, and then it's like win-win for everybody. I don't know how that works. Like I don't
Okay,
really.
so now, all right, so now let's get into the perception of things. One of the reasons why Chanel does not like leaving the toilet seat up, because we've seen videos, and guys, blame YouTube for this one as well. We've seen videos where snakes has come up through the toilet, right, and has bit people. I mean, my heart goes out to anybody who's been bitten. My perception is that hopefully you're safe, but that's just my perception. Um,
So how does the toilet being closed change this?
well, just in case the snake will come, if we open the toilet and see him, we can go ba bam and slap him on his head with the toilet with the lid. But in the sense of, it's just something that she is afraid of. Now, I would say this now, guys. And I'm not saying I'm trying to be understanding, because I understand her perception, right? And Janelle was saying this moment that she's crazy, right? I definitely agree, but I agree because I understand, in the sense that if she's afraid of something, right, and if that's her perception that something's gonna happen, yes, she knows I will be there to help her, but I have to find ways to help fix her perception, to let her know that even I am there with her as well. Like, look, I can't stop the snake from coming in, you're right, but if you feel that, if your perception is that that's what's going to happen, if keeping the toilet lid closed is what's going to save that, right, that's what I'm going to do. So, and I guess that brings that another conversation with why another thing that ties in with perception is compromise, right? Because when you start understanding somebody else's perception, you learn how to compromise to make things work,
Mhm.
right? Right. And I'm gonna say something. For example, I I like having sex on a regular basis, right? Over the years, it was never something that my wife has been savvy to. Like, not saying that I'm not being taken care of on a regular basis, right? But mentally, her perception was, if she doesn't increase her drive, that may cause a rift between me and her. Not saying it was a problem, because that was her perception, I mean, as a guy, my perception was like, bro, if I'm getting it, I'm getting it. You know what I mean? As bad as it sounds. You know what I mean? Just to take things put back in context. But for her perception is that she had to increase her drive, which she did. And I've enjoyed it. And I'm enjoying the fruits of that labor very, very much so. But I was just so happy that within her perception of thinking that it may drive her wedge in between us is that she will try to fix something that didn't need to get fixed. But in the sense that she was trying to compromise, because I never looked at her and was like, baby, I need you to do these things for me. Like I never gave her any reason to perception. And it ties back to the story that you said in the beginning, and it resonated to me in that area. Is like you're thinking something is an issue because your perception is completely wrong, right?
Or different.
Now, are different. Now, in the example, his what was going on in their perception of their relationship was, I'm gonna say, dangerous. For me, it was joyful because I'm gaining benefit from what was perceived on my end. But to hear that story, to realize that mine could have gone completely incorrect, because she could have perceived that, you know what, I'm not pleasing my husband, right? And I guess I'm not the woman for him. And that perception could have taken her to somewhere else. And I would like to say this, guys, and for any one of our couples out there, sometimes when you have some perceptions that feel so dangerous, we have to find ways to talk about it without it being an issue. And I would like to say that in a very strong sense, that we found out that you will find in that majority of the time the most dangerous perception happens during an argument, right? So, but most of the time, when you're in a relationship, when you're doing something good, it's never been thought of, oh, I perceived anything correct. It's more like, oh, you're just doing this because you love me. It's no. As bad as it sounds, it's two of the same things. Because at some point you have to learn. Because everything, I'm gonna say this, not everything will start at that perception, but most stuff starts that way. Because you have to understand based on the ability of what you're perceiving of taking stuff in, right? So you have to take stuff in and be like, you know what? If I take this in, how do I give it? You hear people talk about in their relationship how your husband works all day. He has to bring the money home, right? And some guy's perception is like, if I'm not just working 24/7, my wife will not be happy. And I feel like those perceptions are dangerous because they both have to intertwine, right? But sometimes the perception is that you have to focus some more on that dark area, that you start creating that inner wedge in between. Like, oh, because I have to work so much. Oh, I'm not even care about seeing my wife. Oh, truck drivers, I love you. I'm gonna tell you this. I don't know how you guys do it, because I'm gonna say my perception is that I don't know how you guys want to leave your wife for 1, 2, 3 months driving across the country and can't see your wife. As you guys can see, I'm a very physical person based on the elements I use on my perception. So I would have to see my wife on a regular basis, ladies and gentlemen. But this is the reason why perception is key. But you realize,
I also don't, I mean, I don't want to take away from the fact that some people just genuinely have to do truck driving to support their families, and they don't really
yes,
have a choice, because truck drivers actually make pretty good money.
exactly.
And for people who are otherwise unskilled or otherwise formally educated, it's actually a really good opportunity. So I understand that in that capacity, but yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think that truck driving is necessarily made for somebody with a family. How do you function in that way? I can
Well,
understand also being disciplined in that, like, you know, you don't have a need for anyone but your person. But even if you don't have a need for anyone but your person, like, I don't know, just months on end for the rest of my life. I mean, I could do it for a long distance relationship for maybe a few years or so, but like, get it together, wrap it up, like, come home.
I agree. I'm happy you said, because not to go too far into the truck drivers. One of the reasons why I did use the truck drivers, because I've had a couple conversation with a couple truck drivers lately. I want to shout out to my boy Logan. Um, I shout out a couple of the dreaded truckers out there. In the sense that they're trying to make what we're talking about, Janelle, because of the conversation that we have, that they had the same perception, and they've started to try to take their family on their truck driving adventure.
Oh,
So
that's
yeah, it's actually some of the family members I'm talking about may have young kids as well. So I do wonder when the kids get a little bit older how it will definitely work. But in the early part of these relationships, they're like, okay, if this is we have to spend time together, they're doing the I'm the family, we're the trucking family. I've met a couple trucking family as well, working in my previous endeavor, where they're delivering products coming from Canada and coming from California, right, on their big rigs, and it's husband and wife who are doing it because most trucking endeavors is 8 on, 8 off. Not saying I'm going into the work aspect of it, but to realize that there's people out there trying to change that narrative. But I use it because it's one of the most known jobs where, and I don't want to say it bad like this, where marriages deteriorate over the years based on the ability to be together. So it wasn't for bashing it, guys. Just so I'm back in context. But it's just to highlight because I've seen that area as one of the most dangerous to highlight, and that's the reason why I said, guys, perception is key in this moment because this is my perception, and I will say this: one of the greatest thing about perception is that it can't be right or wrong because when you understand after your perception, you know what to do better. That's one of the greatest things. Because, like, okay, for example, I use the toilet. The first couple times my wife left at me, she was like, yo, her perception's like, yo, why this man ain't paying attention to me when I'm trying to get the toilet down? Because I ain't trying to get bit by no snakes, right? But after a couple times, and me proceeding like, yo, this woman is crazy. Like, did she really think a snake's gonna crawl out at 12 o'clock in the morning and sneak into the bed when we're on this nice big high rise king size bed? Like, he's gonna be like, you know what? I got a special target tonight, and you're gonna be it, right? But it's to understand people's perception. But what I want to make sure their key ingredients is like to move forward is like what do you do with these perceptions when you understand them? Because I want to say this, not all perception when you understand it is good. That's very important. Like perception is key, but it's not always good.
But so give an example of that. What do you mean it's not always good once you understand it?
All right, I'm happy I said that. We're gonna use an abusive relationship in this example, right? If your perception and it's not to laugh, guys. I want to take a moment of 2 second silence for anybody who there has been abuse in a relationship. Abuse is never really agreeable. Now, just so I can get taken back out of context, for people who are in some of these abusive relationship, right, and your perception that the beating that you're getting is that he loves you, or or
Okay.
for my lesbian is there another term for lesbian, Janelle? I don't want to make sure I said it incorrectly. You can put me back in context because for my studs who I know is out there in the world, or for the homosexuals, right, when they hit each other and they're sitting in that moment, or for their transgender, just so I don't forget anybody in alphabetical order, um in the sense that if you're in these relationship and you're being abused, because I guess I need to use the word abuse because it is what it is. It's abuse.
In any relationship, it doesn't matter what your gender or sexuality is, because I mean, as of this year, I've seen like YouTube videos where people think that like it's a joke that like their girlfriends are beating the crap out of them, and it's just like, you laugh about it, but like every gender, every sexuality goes through things like that. There will always be an abusive relationship along the spectrum. So we're talking to everybody literally right now.
Everyone. And I want to say this, and this is the reason why I want to say this is when perception is dangerous. Because if your perception is that somebody is abusing you is love, that's a very dangerous perception. I want to make sure I say that in very much sense. And guys, sometimes abuse is not always physical. I think that's something that people use the word misconstrued. You will realize, and I think because my mental space, because for me, a cut will heal. Not saying guys don't break my bones, because I like walking. I mean, I like using my hand and stuff like that. But a physical abuse would heal, and I've come to realize some of the most dangerous abuse comes from the mental side as well, because what happens is when you start hurting somebody in their mind, it doesn't go anywhere. Don't get me wrong. When you hurt someone in their skin, it doesn't go anywhere either. That's just to show you how permanent this abuse is. And when you start taking wrong perception from abuse, it's dangerous. And I'm gonna use the word for example, right? Don't use things knowingly that it can hurt each other in one sense. Like, for example, if you understand your significant other's perception of things, like I'm gonna use me and my wife, because I want to use natural example, guys. And it took me years to understand this. She'd be like, when she gets mad, don't touch me. Right? And my perception of this in the beginning is like, yo, you're my wife, don't touch me. So I was like, was I perceiving it wrong? Like, I'm supposed to be able to touch my wife. I don't care how angry you are. Like, it's not like I'm physically hurting you. But probably because my perception is that I'm not hurting you, doesn't mean that I'm not hurting you. If I make sense with that.
Well, I kind of, I guess, want to go over into another topic as you said that, because I think that people don't realize that you are a self-autonomous being.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you are married or not, your body belongs to you, and you have dominion and say over your body. So regardless of who you're with and that person feeling like, well, you're my person, like I should be able to touch you, like that is also not an okay perception, because
that is correct.
Same way that people are talking about like marital rape at this point. Like there are men out there who genuinely feel like this is my, person. I should be able to have sex with them whenever I want to have sex with them, right? I think the same concept applies to being touched. Like if I don't want my body to be touched in any given point, then I am entitled to not be touched at any given point, right? Whether I'm upset or not. And I think that it's just more of an educated conversation at this point, because as the generations move forward, psychology is more of a thing, and people are now able to understand the what is behind a bodily autonomy, and even just putting that in context for children as well. Just because you grew up in a time when children just did what they were told does not mean that that is supposed to be how it is done at this point in time. Doesn't mean that it was right at that point in time either. I mean, I grew up in a time when people would force me to go and hug and kiss people, and not grasping the fact that you're really teaching your child that other people have autonomy over their body when you force them to hug and kiss people. So it's important to like address the fact that your body is your body.
That's correct. And you can't perceive that because you're with somebody that person belongs to you. So I mean, as I said, guys, perception goes in so many different ways. I think we can go into the examples of how much more dangerous it can become, right? But I think it's very important to realize how to identify the wrong things when you feel like, hey, my perception is wrong, or to figure out my perception is right. I guess I can go to a little mental space of how over the years, whenever I've tried certain things, because it was me I want to say tried. Sometimes I think my perceptions are tries. And when something works, I try to hold on to it. For example, and I'm gonna use my wife again. the first time hugging and kissing her, I didn't know if grabbing the booty cheek was okay, right? And a lot of guys in this moment, I mean, I can't speak for every guy because this is my perception as well. A lot of us may not want to do it in the first instance because it's more like, okay, if I do that, am I being rude? Am I being disrespectful? And then sometimes and I would say this, and guys, this is one thing I want you to get. Do not have the perception because a girl makes you want to hold her tight to her body that she's a hoe. Not because sometimes somebody gets a little bit friendly with you on the first night. Sometimes somebody may be feeling you. You know what I mean? Your aura maybe just be that awesome. So their perception is that, I mean, this may be the one. But that's a whole nother conversation before I dove into. Janelle's like, no, stop right there. Hold on. Pull that one back.
No, I'm just glad that you talked about first interactions because I actually had this conversation with a group of people today that the perceptions were just completely different. And I think it had to do with me being older, or one of the older people in the group. But so there's a perception amongst younger people who did not grow up with telephones that weren't able to text. Maybe I'm just that old, but I grew up in a time with telephones that didn't have texting mechanisms. So in my opinion, on a first interaction with somebody, if I give a man my number, I expect him to call my phone. That is my expectation.
That's not a perception. That's just so we can fix that one.
I do not like people texting me, first of all. I look at a text message and I turn my phone around because I can't even bother. Like, it's a waste of time in my opinion. Like, I can get out, a full-on hour-long conversation over text message what I would get out in like 10 minutes over the phone. To me, it's just not my preference, but okay. So the perception behind it for a lot of the younger people is that they prefer texting, first of all. But second of all, they feel like calling someone before texting them is rude. I was mind blown. I mean, that's what phones are for. I don't understand how that could be rude. I mean, like I said, I grew up in the time when texting wasn't even an option. So what the hell were you going to do if somebody just, called you? Well, like, did you expect a letter in the mail to let them know that they were going to call you? Like, why is it rude? I mean, I understand FaceTime. I get that because, FaceTime is something you want to be prepared for, right? You want to have, notice about. But a phone call, people, I think, forget the fact that they don't actually have to answer their phone when it rings. It's not like they showed up at your front door and you had no choice. Like, it's a phone call. You can answer it or not answer it. If you don't feel like speaking, you don't answer the phone. If you're busy, you don't answer the phone. If you want to call them back later, you answer the phone. You call them back. Like, I don't know what it is about the younger generation, but it was just interesting to have that conversation because of the varying perceptions. Like, I just could not believe that people thought it was rude. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, here I am, like, thinking, why the hell won't you just call me? I'm not a teenager anymore. And then there's a whole huge part of the population that thinks it's rude. And I'm like, wow. Anyway, it was just a funny thing that I had a conversation about today that, like, was really exemplifying the difference in perceptions and how we need to actually, like, think of other people's perceptions. So that was interesting. Although I'm not changing my mind.
No, but you touch on something that, I mean, we've been talking about the perceptions for quite some time. I may jump into the broader spectrums. Spoke to a stripper friend of mine. This is like about 2 months ago, right? We used to work in the call center together. I think it was Publix. Shopping with her girlfriend, right? And her sibling and her child, to say the least. Had a very good conversation because some of the things that we talked about that she's dealt with on the perception of things is based on her lifestyle. As you can said, that she's a stripper. Now, a lot of the perception is that because she's a stripper, she's technically should not be into women. They're like, oh, you're a stripper, you're into ladies. You're like, yeah, why is that surprising? Also, you're because you're a stripper, you're a hoe. It's like, no, I got bills and this is how I earn my money. And her thing is that one of the reasons why she wanted to change her profession is because her perception is that eventually she's going to end up getting a rape if she doesn't stop. And it was very hurtful to hear me say that. Not saying I'm promoting her doing her endeavors, right? But is the perception of people to understand, not because you see someone do something, especially when it comes to line of work, meaning that that's completely what they're about, to say the least. I want to say that not because when somebody works a 9 to 5 they're a doctor, mean that your perception is when they come home they want to be a doctor. You know what I mean? You'd be surprised that when most people do what they do on their daily basis, when they come home, their perception is that, and I want to use their perception, is that they want to live a regular life that doesn't revolve around doing exactly what they've been doing all day, to say the least. It's like, no, I want to come home and relax.
But I will say that there are people who I've actually spoken to who have a difference in perception where they actually really love what they do in terms of being a chef, right? So it's like I work all day and I'm a chef all day and I cook all day and all that, but when I come home, it's also relaxing for me to cook for myself and for me to cook what I want to eat, you know? So again, yeah, it comes down to perception and just finding out what that other person's perception is. Again, communication.
Yeah. I
And
mean, Janelle, you said that. I mean, I've realized that perception has come back to communication a lot. Can I ask you from? I think I've said a lot from a male perspective. Can you give me from a woman perspective as well when it comes to perception and communication? Because I think, especially for a male who's listening as well, they can understand something from you.
well, in terms of what?
Relationship in a sense, because we've been around this area, and I've really come to realize that communication is very much important. Because for one, as guys, we're very, I'm not gonna say it, we're poor communicators. um we will realize that our significant others, and I guess again I'll speak for my wife, she will let me know how she feels within the first heartbeat of how she feels anything.
Mm.
And now for me, and I guess I'm not talking about perception as the moment. I'm a Pebbles person, so it's like when stuff happens, it builds up. Like I'll take, like, like for example, if you offend me, I'll eat the first offense. I eat the second. I eat the third. But when you get to the third, the fourth, and the fifth, it's more like, oh, so this is what we're doing. So now I guess then I'm gonna get off, and then somebody else's perception is like, yo, where is all this coming from?
So I'm exactly like you. Um I I tend to have those issues where like I take and take and take and take until I just get like super frustrated and I'm gonna, go off on you essentially. And a lot of people just don't like when it gets to that point, people will be like, well, what the hell is wrong with her? Like what is going on? Like why is she acting like that? And generally, I said this in the beginning as well. So a lot of times you just don't really know what people are going through in other aspects of their life. So sometimes it ends up being compounded as well. And that's, another thing that I go through as well. It's like if I'm dealing with something on in one area of my life that is really frustrating and I'm just taking and taking and taking, it's gonna end up coming out on somebody that I didn't really mean it to come out on. Like I might snap at somebody and I didn't mean to snap at them because they just said the wrong thing at the wrong time or they just popped up at the wrong time. Um, I think that communication in terms of perception is important, but communication in general is important. not just in terms of perception. I think that communication is something that everyone needs to work on, even when you think that you're great at it, because I am generally a direct person. I usually will be able to just, say exactly what I need to say. And fairly, I'm an honest person as well. I've gotten the whole, like, you're too honest. So to me, I don't really have problems with communicating until it comes down to, as you said, taking and taking and taking. Because I feel like if I were to communicate, I feel like it would come off too harsh. If I were to just say, like, okay, yeah, now that wasn't okay. And then it just comes out every single time you do something to me that I don't appreciate, right? So instead of saying it every single time you do something I don't appreciate, I let it pile and build and pile and build. And then it just ends up being the complete, wrong way to deal with it. But again, communication is something that I think everyone needs to work on. I have been working on it for, a few years now. I've understood there are certain parts to my communication that need work. I think that in terms of perception, though, it's really important to try to understand where the other person is coming from before you react. Because everyone is going to be reacting from their perception. Instead of, seeing a reaction and not understanding where it's coming from, but getting upset or frustrated by it, or even hurt by it. It's just better if you just say, hey, what was that about? Why did you do this? Or why do you think that? Or why is this a problem? In terms of being able to move forward in a situation, because if you don't understand where someone is coming from, you're going to internalize it and you're going to react in a way that is disproportionate to the situation. I'll give an example. I had a relationship at one point in which I had little OCD tendencies that started to come out at that point, and I wasn't aware. I didn't know that I even had any problems with OCD or like anxiety at that point. So I was unable to communicate why things bothered me. And I acknowledged that they were things that didn't bother other people as much as it bothered me. So actually scrap that relationship conversation. I can give a better one. So I actually ended up having like a huge blow up with my mom at one point when I was in college, because my mom asked, or not asked, but paid for somebody to come and put ceiling fans in. And they took the ceiling that was already there, which was like the bubbly, what do you call that, like popcorn ceiling or whatever. They scraped that off in order to put the ceiling fans up. And not only do I come home and there's somebody in my parking spot that I wasn't aware of, and then I come home and my like bedroom is a hot mess and I have popcorn ceiling all over my floor, and I did not know that somebody was even going to be in my room, in my space. I did not know that somebody was even coming to put ceiling fans in. It was just a hot mess overall, because everything about my like OCD and anxiety that like I did not know that I had at the time started to come out, and I started to freak out. Like, we literally got into a huge argument, and I could not like articulate, I could not explain why I was so upset, because God no, I'm sure people would be upset at like, there's a mess in my room that wasn't there before, right? I think that's a fairly normal perception of the situation. I was livid. I wasn't just upset. I was livid. I was screaming. I was cussing. Like, and it was more than just like there's stuff on my floor and a little bit on my bed. It was like a blow up of just like things that I just could not explain properly. So I ended up feeling crazy. I ended up looking crazy. People were thinking I was crazy. Like, it was a hot mess, like I said.
Wait, Janelle. There was a lot of perception going on in that moment.
And like I know she was looking at me like I was crazy too, because nobody could understand why I was this upset. Um, it took me a while, like I said, to be able to even communicate why I was upset. And when I say a while, I mean it's really only between the last 3 to 5 years that I've been able to understand that I have certain OCD slash anxiety traits that affect me, and I've been able to, attempt to control my behaviors surrounding those things, right? But because I was unable to articulate it and unable to communicate it, and no one attempted to ask, because again, everybody just took it as like, well, she's pissed off and she's crazy and she's going off like, she's just crazy kind of situation, instead of asking like, what's going on? Like, why are you so upset? Like, what happened? And, at least me attempting to communicate or attempting to explain what was going on with me, nobody did that. And so I think that happens regularly, honestly, where people, get upset and they may feel as though like, well, she yelled at me, or she said something to me that I didn't like, or she dealt with the situation the way I didn't like it. So, screw that. I'm not talking about it. I'm not even going to bother with it. And I'm pissed off. And, now it's on her to fix it, or whatever the case is, right? Instead of actually getting to the root of the problem and figuring out like, what was the actual problem here? Like, why did that just happen? And why was it so important to you that, things happen differently? Because then in that case, moving forward, we would both be able to understand what was going on, and we'd both be able to address the issue moving forward and not have that happen again. Which, I mean, like I said, I've worked on my stuff and we've been able to communicate it. I have also come to understand that, like, I don't really like people in my parking spot, not because it's quote unquote my parking spot, but it's a piece of the OCD. It's like, I like things a certain way, and when things are not that certain way, my brain can't function. Like, I can't really focus on things because it's like, wait, that's not supposed to be like that. That's not supposed to be, where it is. Or it's not supposed to be in that way, or things are out of place. And it's like my brain is frazzled now. um so unless I have, notice, or unless like somebody lets me know like, hey, this is moved, or this is, gonna be different from now on, or something along those lines, and I'm able to, actually process it and figure myself out, then I can move forward, right? But again, it's about communication and about the perception behind everything that happens. And in order to get to the perceptions behind the things that are happening, you need to communicate. You need to ask questions and not take things so personally.
I definitely agree, because perception have done with done with a lot of things. For example, I'm gonna use you in this example as well. I know if ever I'm running late, you don't want me to text you or call you at 8 o'clock telling you I'm running late. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But that's just because I've known you over the period of time and come to understand like, yo, your perception, if you are late, is just gonna make me upset. So I've always tried to make sure if I think I'm gonna be late, even if I know I'm not gonna be late, but I know I'm gonna run close to the time, I'll be like, yo, you know what I mean? Give you the 20, 30 minutes because you said it. Because, for example, not to give everybody else the extra perception, right? But I'm gonna use the incident of the situation going on in your room. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm gonna say the person who's probably dealing with you in that moment, whatever, like, okay, their perception is this person is crazy. Now, if the other person in the situation who have an idea, who knows you, who could have helped cure that perception, be like, yo, and I'm just gonna shift the narrative like this. You know what? If Janelle comes home and see her room like this, she gonna flip. Yo, I'm gonna call her. Yo, Jet, look, Peters. Yo, they're working on the ceiling fan in your room. So when you get here, don't freak out.
And literally, it would have been just that simple. Because I would have had time to be like, oh, okay, I'm going home to a mess. Like, cool, that's what I expect now, right? Yeah. Like my the way things are in my mind needs to shift a little bit right now. The way I left my room is not the way I'm going to find it. So and like you said, it's not the fact that, you know, somebody is late. It's really the fact that I need you to respect my time. So if you're going to be late, just let me know that you're going to be late. It's like it's never a big deal. I mean, you know that. Like I'm just always like, yeah, cool, okay. But if you don't let me know and you have me waiting there and then right on the dot you're like, yeah, I'm gonna be half an hour late, that's gonna be upsetting to me.
That's gonna be an issue.
Yeah.
And I will say this, and guys, do you know what I've learned from this episode? How important it is to understand and deal with your own perception, to say the least. Because for example, if Janelle is going to be late, because her perception is if you're late, you're just wasting her time, she's going to technically let you know, hey, I'm going to be late, right? These are ways you can use your own perception to help cure other perceptions, to say the least, so you can be able to understand. And guys, and Janelle was talking about something else earlier that kind of nicked me. For our young people out there, you can't tell people's perception over the phone. It's funny. Just so you know that, over the text message. So someone will get to play with your emotions and change your perception based on simple things of words they could type. So not to take away from y'all new school people who like to text. I don't want to kill y'all narrative, but I'm just letting you know y'all hope game is so sensitive. And I will say this, guys, from my perception, this is one of the reasons why this generation is so sensitive. But that's from my perception, guys. Now, Janelle, I think we've covered perception and relationship in a very grand space. Is there anything else we would like to add before we go?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. So guys, just so you know, one of the reasons why the perception was such a big thing for me, last week our episode on imposter syndrome was very heartfelt in my mind. I spoke to a lot of people who listened to the episode who was like, as crazy as it sounds, they never thought that there was even a title or a word for it. Like, as my friend said, yo, bro, I was just going mad. That's what I thought it was. I was just like, I'm going crazy. There's actually a word. So that means there's a cure. Hold on. Please tell me you guys are going to do an episode on the cure. Like, I need a cure. But for anybody who missed last week's episode, the imposter syndrome is a very big thing. Please go ahead, take a listen to that episode, right? And tell me, if just for my mental space, how you think the imposter syndrome and perception ties into each other. I mean, to say the least. All right, guys, that's it for this week's episode. Peace.